You ever warm your mouth up before podcast? You ever see
What is
Savon do that?
what is the vocal warm up that singers
Do
do?
re mi fa sol la ti do. Do re mi fa sol la ti do. Do. Hey Zach Messing, I'm not going to swear today. If I don't say a single swear word, Peter White is going to pay me 100 quid or dollars, actually, in American. So I'm not going to address this comment, but stick around. You might be surprised, Zachary. All right, so JR is going to be running a few minutes late. Welcome to Shut Up and Diddle. Today I'm going to be diddling Bryson.
That's Pat Lange's show, not ours.
Oh, all right. Pat Lange and Brianna's. Dude, I'm in one of these Indian chairs. Can you see this? I'm in my mom's office.
Nice chair. Did you get that from Costco?
Greetings. This is how you sit in Mumbai. Okay, I hope my battery doesn't die. I'm at 41% on my MacBook. All right, cool. Let's start with these questions. We're going to kill it. Just coming off of another podcast. Don't really want to talk about it that much. Crazy.
About what is that show called?
On the Cox Office?
Oh.
I don't know, something like that.
In the box office.
I
can't talk about it, or else we won't talk about any programming this show.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Responses. There's a good bit.
You want to just go back and forth with questions we think are good that we got until I run out, and then we can just keep going through yours?
Yeah, we should go back and forth. So I'll start, and then we can go from there. I'm going to start from the top. Okay. Leighton Poitra. Oh, I don't know if these are supposed to be anonymous or not, so maybe I shouldn't read the names. Weakness training / extra sessions on top of GPP for advanced athletes with extra time. Weakness training, extra sessions on top of GPP for advanced athletes with extra time. It depends on your weaknesses. If you have a strength weakness, I would say you should bias your GPP toward heavier training, rather than doing regular grace at 135. Maybe you do heavy grace or moderate to heavy grace at 185. Instead of doing, regular Diane 225 deadlifts and kipping handstand push-ups, maybe you do strict and heavy Diane, etc. Something like that, Leighton, if you have a strength weakness. If you have a skill weakness, then adding in 10 to 15 minutes of practice in the form of an EMOM prior to a workout is probably the best way to get better at that. While you're fresh, you're able to uptake new neurological information or learn new skills easier rather than smashing yourself into the dirt and trying to learn it in a workout. I would say practicing fresh is a really good way to do that. If you have like a muscular stamina weakness, then you need to find creative ways to sprinkle that into your training a little bit more. One of the ways I like to do that are intervals, where initially you start with challenging unbroken sets for you and you finish with intensity on machines. And then as you get better and better and better, you can start with machine intensity and finish with max reps on that exercise to continue pushing capacity, but in a setting that you can recover and repeat, not hit burnout and fail and just stand there and stare at it. So any thoughts on that, Bryson? Weakness training.
I think just even more like bigger picture kind of stuff. I would say weakness training, like you can just thinking about how you order your training. Like if you say you follow Sentinel Compete, if you have
don't even mention Sentinel because of Zach's comment.
He was joking.
Oh.
But so if you follow like Sentinel Compete and there is, you typically struggle with like squatting endurance.
In that case, scan the QR code.
And workout 2 is like a bunch of thrusters or a bunch of wall balls or something that's just going to blow your legs up and probably not a good workout for you, and maybe a weakness workout for you. I would put that first as at least workout 1. you could even potentially do it before the lifting, depending on what the lifting is, and how often you do that. So just how you order your training and prioritize things. The things you're weakest at, typically I would try to hit earlier in the session or day.
The lighting in here stinks. All right, your turn.
If you can only pick one monostructural, one gymnastics, and one weightlifting movement for the most fitness ROI, what would those 3 movements be?
One mono, one
I think
one
me and
weightlifting?
JR would have all the same answers. I feel
Okay,
like
you go.
I would say running, ring muscle ups, and squat snatch.
Ooh. For the most ROI on fitness?
I could see strict pull-ups instead of ring muscle-ups too, but I'm just thinking like if I could only do 3 movements for the rest of my life.
And is it any variation of those movements?
I would think so. Like if you say ring muscle-ups, can you do strict ring muscle-ups? I think so.
So for me, if it's only 3 movements for the rest of my life, it's definitely running. I would choose a burpee if I can do any variation of a burpee. And then for my weightlifting exercise, I would probably choose squat snatch wasn't my first thought. Squat clean or thruster was my first thought because you can go quite a bit heavier. And I think you get enough pressing and upper body work from burpee variations, whether that's a burpee has a lot of pressing involved or a burpee pull-up, etc., or a devil's press, or a burpee box get over, enough use of the upper body.
I feel like if you're going to choose burpee, like saying any variation of burpee is like a little bit like cheating. Like you'd have to say like burpee pull up or burpee box jump over or something. If what you're saying, like if we're going off of like, hey, if you choose burpee, then you could literally do burpees over anything or to anything or burpee pull-ups, then I feel like that's the obvious answer, but that's just because then it's more than 3 movements.
Then I would say running, burpee, pull up, and maybe even just a front squat. I don't know. I think something that you can, and the reason is you pick a monostructural element that you can do for long, slow. You can do it for short and fast. You can do it anywhere in between. You pick a gymnastic exercise that you can do in a ton of volume that you're not going to get beat up doing. So the repeatability is high. You can just continue to do it and do it and do it and do it without getting hurt. Like a movement, I think like a muscle up, it's like you get into the realm of doing more than 100 reps in a week and you're risking like, orthopedic calamity, some might say. And then for your weightlifting exercise, I'm thinking something that's most total body that also passes through the full range of motion of a squat that you can get the heaviest on while still using a lot of your upper body. So maybe it's an overhead squat. Maybe it's running.
You don't think you need to pull from the floor at all?
I think you need something that you can just go heaviest on. So if it were just a deadlift, you pulling from the floor is great, but then you don't get to squat. If it's just a squat snatch, well, most people can't go heavy enough on a squat snatch to reap the benefits of a heavy day. You know what I mean? Most gen pop just can't go heavy enough on a squat snatch for them to achieve the physical adaptations of going heavy. And I think a front squat or a back squat or an overhead squat are better there, but probably just a front squat because most people can go really heavy. And the people who can't can probably learn to go heavy a lot easier than on a squat snatch. JR,
I think it probably, if we're talking about like gen pop stuff, then I would say it's a different answer for every person almost, or like there's different answers. Again, I mean, if you could only pick one mono, one gymnastic, one weightlifting movement for the most fitness ROI, what would those 3 movements be? So I'm just thinking about my own self for the rest of my life. I can only do one of each.
You're going to be pretty weak if the only weight that you can move is a squat snatch weight.
Mine would be running, burpee, pull up, and front squat.
Oh,
nice.
We're dick twins. It's crazy. I personally, mine wouldn't be that. Mine would be running, burpee, pull-ups, and clean and jerks because I can't squat heavy enough and it freaking hurts sometimes when I squat. So I want something that doesn't hurt at all. So maybe it would be a deadlift or a power clean or a clean and jerk, but definitely running and burpee pull-ups.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like you would be pretty weak if you only squat snatch, but then I would also say like like your overhead would be really weak if you were only ever doing front squats.
But you'd be doing burpee pull-ups, and pull-ups
Yeah.
make your overhead really, really good if you're doing strict pull-ups.
Yeah,
I
mine
think-
would probably.
I think
I,
that's-
I should probably change mine to thruster.
I was thinking that. That's crazy.
Because I still think you can go heavy enough
right.
to stay strong and to not be weak.
Do you think that I can snatch and thruster the same?
Yeah, I think it should probably be really close.
But I
Like,
don't
I
think
think-
most.
like,
I
I-
think
like-
most people can thruster a lot more than they can snatch.
Right.
Most gen pop people, yeah, for sure. I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
I think
okay.
I think competitive athletes, it's really close. Just like I also think bench press and power clean is a pretty interesting correlate. They're very different, but they should be pretty close, I think, too.
All right, you're up. So we're just going like, ring around the rosy. I read a question, we all answer it. Bryson reads a question, we all answer it. So your turn.
Wait, did JR make one?
He said running or pull up.
No, I mean like make a poll.
Oh yeah, you did, right?
I didn't.
Oh, WTF, mate. Okay.
Oh,
then.
I thought you just wanted me to share the
No,
listener
I wanted you to make a
questions
poll.
thing.
It's all good. Okay, next one that I have is this one. Dang, I can't. Hang on, I gotta pull this up on a different. This stuff's complicated, boy. I tell you what, it's not too intuitive like that on Instagram. Okay. Over time, as the sport and your programs have evolved, have your weekly non-negotiables changed? That's the first question. And then he's making the presumption that they have changed, and he says, and how have they changed?
When you read weekly non-negotiables in a programming sense, do you think he's talking about like, hey, I got to get at least 30 muscle ups this week or 50 muscle ups?
Movements that you do every week. I'm going to talk about this for Gen Pop, but not for competitive athletes. I think the non-negotiables that I have for people every week are to squat in some form or fashion, pull from the floor in some form or fashion, perform an upper body press in some form or fashion, and to run, row, bike, or jump for a really long period of time or higher volume in some form or fashion. And usually they're doing all of those or a lot of those every week. And if I had to pick one, it would be run every week. And if there's one that we definitely do every week, it's probably closest to running every week. So for GPP, I would just say you need to squat in some form or fashion, and there are a million ways to do it. You need to pull from the floor in some form or fashion and have like rapid extension of the hips to produce power in some form or fashion. And there are a million ways to do it again. And I think you should run, row, bike, ski, do jump rope or whatever. And there are a million ways and distances and time domains you can do that too. And then if I had to get a little quirky, a little edgy, I would say I really try to program some, like I get into, so on 60, I find myself skipping burpees in a week every now and then because I don't want people to get sick of them. But I think burpee is just about as functional of a body weight exercise you could possibly do and devastating for fitness. So I like burpees.
Do you think that's changed though, or is that just your weekly?
No, those have been my weekly non-negotiables, and they have not changed for me. The competitive ones, I don't think really have changed either. JR?
Well, I'll just speak to like the affiliate programming because I don't do competitive programming, but the ones that I know are like non-negotiables now that I still feel pretty confident haven't really changed, at least over the last 5 years, have been strict upper body gymnastics at least once a week. So whether that's push-ups and strict pull-ups, legless rope climbs and strict handstand push-ups, whatever, some form of strict push or pull, whether it's in a strength setting or if it's in a Metcon setting. Going over 20 minutes at least twice a week, at least. So minimum. And usually it's more like 3. I just think going long in general has seemed to show a lot more volume tolerance, and just a lot more base fitness with my members over the years, as a lot of them have gotten over 30, 35, 40 years old. Odd object work. And then this kind of goes along with it, but a lot of trunk work. Like I would say I'm probably pretty biased to midline. There's a lot of weeks that they do toes to bar and GHD in the same day, or toe to bar GHD in consecutive days a lot. And I like doing that on purpose. I just think that over time, I found that I've had a lot fewer lower back injuries because of the continued focus on developing the midline. I just think that's really important. And I think a lot of the strongman stuff, a lot of the carries, a lot of the sled work go a long way with that too.
Bryson?
I think I pretty much agree with like the movement ones that you listed. The only thing I would kind of add to that, and this is more for like me personally, but a lot of times I just think about what is going to limit me in workouts. Like I know that every week or a certain number of times a week, I want to do a workout that's I'm either going to break on or go faster on because of how hard the squatting is in that workout. Like my legs are blowing up, and I think about how workouts are going to feel when I'm running them for myself. Like obviously you can say, hey, I need to squat twice a week. But if one of those times is like 135 squat snatches and it's only 30 total in a workout, and then the other time is like back squatting or something, then you could go a few weeks without ever doing like 200 wall balls in a workout where there's like 2 sets of 100, things like that. So I would say most of the time I think about it in movements and stuff like that. But just since you already said that, to add on to that, I think about, hey, I want to make sure that I'm doing a workout this week that is a lot of squatting, and that's what makes me want to stop in the workout. I want to do a workout this week that's a lot of pushing and pulling back to back. And I want to do a workout this week that is limited by my breathing and not my muscles.
Okay, I'm going to read this question because I want us to answer it. What's your ideal time duration for a workout? And I take that as if you had to pick a time to work out, like a length of time to work out every day, what would be the ideal time? For me, it would be 30 minutes. And that's because there are a lot of different ways you can write a 30-minute workout. You can go every 10 minutes for 3 sets. And you basically have maybe something that's like 1-to-1 work rest, and it's 15 minutes total work. You can do 1 on, 1 off for 15 sets. You can do 3 on, 2 off for 6 sets. You do a lot of interval formats, which allow for a lot of intensity. And I think that the 30-minute time domain is, like, for me right now, the peak of where I can take a really, really high intensity and repeat it. 40 minutes is like the intensity is going to be just a little bit lower. 20 minutes is like, well, I wish the volume was a little more, generally speaking. So I think 30 minutes is good. And you can also just do a 30-minute AMRAP, or you can also do just a 30-minute EMOM that's a little lower intensity. I like 30 minutes.
Bryson, you go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really, like, if you're answering the question, like you said, like, hey, you could just, every workout you do has to have a 30-minute time domain to it now, basically. I think that's the only right answer. Because like you said, you can make a 30-minute workout so different. You can do a 30-minute AMRAP that's just really long and more aerobic, or you could do really, really hard intervals, and it's 30 is not too long to do really hard intervals. Mm-hmm. You can still do really hard intervals in a 20-minute window, obviously, but if you're ever going to do intervals or an EMOM for just 20 minutes, then you're probably not making it super like aerobic and continuous, or else it's just going to be too easy. So I think that's the right answer.
Yeah, and mine is the incorrect answer, because mine actually is 20 minutes. And I think that's changed over the years. I think really it's just more so finding more than 20 minutes at a time sometimes to get something in, just with the kids and stuff. And I like the 20-minute one because I found myself just doing straight 20-minute AMRAPs more lately, instead of doing an EMOM for 20 minutes or an alternating EMOM for 20 minutes. Just because I know that I don't really want to do a 20-minute AMRAP. Like last Friday before I left the gym, I did a 20-minute AMRAP of a 200-meter run and 10 feedback squats. at 100 pounds. And that 20 minutes felt like it took forever because I knew I was going to be able to get 12 or 13 rounds on it. And if I would have just done every 2 minutes for 20 minutes, to y'all's point, I could have gamed it. I could have been like, hey, I'm gonna hold 90-second rounds. So I run, I pick the bag right up and I go. But it would have been really easy for me to just do it as an EMOM and just run 1 minute and then squat 1 minute and stand around for 20 or 30 seconds in between. I did one yesterday that was pretty good, where it was harder and it was within the same minute. I like the 10 sets thing. I like doing 10 sets of something, but just making it like a 1 minute on, 1 minute off. I think you can get a lot of intensity out of that. It was 5 parallel handstand push-ups plus 5 D ball over the shoulder in minute 1, and then minute 2 is rest. So 10 sets of that.
I did a 20-minute AMRAP yesterday as well. It was 15 cal biker, 10 lunging wall balls, 5 P-bar traverses, just as like a quickie to get in before. Well, something I didn't really have to warm up for before driving to Virginia.
I think, you know, when me and Taylor answer with 30 minutes, it's from just like a straight up training perspective. But JR had a good point, like obviously with kids and just general life. I feel like there is a big difference between 20 and 30 minutes in terms of like, hey, I just need to get in the gym and do something.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. And if you're looking at it from a different perspective, like say, hey, you had to tell somebody who's trying to get into working out what the ideal time is, then maybe I would tell them 20 minutes. So it's a little bit less daunting and they can just get in and do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me too. Like, I would say most affiliate programs, not all, but most affiliates or people that do affiliate programming, looking for those 20-minute or more days don't come by very often, and they don't have to be 20-minute AMRAPs or 25 or 30-minute AMRAPs. But it's interesting, if you think the ideal time is 20 to 30 minutes, then that's what we think is the most valuable, then that's what your people should be doing.
Right.
I think that's it would be interesting to hear other gym owners and affiliate programmers, if you ask them what's your ideal time to work out, and they said 15 minutes, and you go and you look at their programming, is a lot of their stuff about 15 minutes, or is it longer, or is it shorter?
We have a lot of longer workouts at CrossFit Charlotte. I would say probably way more than most. We're probably in like the 15 to 25 minute time domain. All right, Bryson, do you have another one?
If you see a work, I think JR and Taylor have maybe talked about this a little bit before, but it was in more of like a passive aggressive way. So we'll answer this in a normal way. If you see a workout another coach programs that's killer, do you make your athletes do it? I think that there's nothing wrong with using another, like, this kind of just goes into programming in general. Taylor mentioned this to me earlier, but like getting good at programming has a lot to do with looking at other people's programming. And if you see someone write a really cool workout, it's almost weirder to like try hard to not do it. Like if you really like that workout and you think it's a really good stimulus and it makes you think of, like, say you're programming for like an individual and you're like, wow, that would be really good for so-and-so because they need to work on this. Now, when you go to write for them, like, at least for me, that workout's just going to be in my head and I would have to try super hard to not write anything like it, or I could just write it and give that other person credit. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I think
yes, I would give other people's workouts and just say, hey, courtesy of.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, we all write workouts inspired by someone else's. Yep. Whether it was .com in the earlier days, whether it's Dave programming the games or the Open or anything. And I understand the idea too of like, hey, you don't own a workout. Like, you don't own those movements. You don't own that combination. Anyone can use it for whatever they want. But I think a certain person,
God damn, this thing is uncomfortable.
Maybe someone that sees it a little bit more as art, like kind of like writing a paper. You know, when you cite someone else's idea, that's just what you do. You cite it because you're like, I don't want to plagiarize this and someone to think I'm a brilliant guy when really it's just someone else's idea. That's kind of the way I see it. I think it's awesome to use other people's workouts, and I think other people's workouts are great. And I think a lot of times people will write workouts the way you don't, and that's what makes them good.
Right.
Because we all get into our little pigeonholed way of doing things. What I do think is important though is to cite it. So
Yep.
if you and not even if you use it exactly, like let's say you use like a Fibonacci rep scheme, but you don't use kettlebell deadlifts and parallel handstand push-ups. I don't think there's like, you don't have to, but if you use Fibonacci, there's nothing wrong with saying
This is a twist. Yeah.
Inspired by Fibonacci final, blah, blah, blah. Like a +2, I honestly think that you'll get more street cred if you tell people, hey, this is where I got this. Like kind of shows that you're a student of the game and that you're not so egotistical into thinking that your workouts are always superior, that you can look around and acknowledge other people's good work. I think that's good.
What do you think is like the line of where you should or shouldn't give credit? Like, so like if someone did a really cool 21:15.9 you'd never heard of, and then you wrote it for someone, but you made it 21:14.7. Obviously, you probably still give that person credit. But then, like, what if you make it 3 rounds of 21? Then, like, you still probably give them credit, but it's like a little bit farther away. Now, what if you change one of the movements and make it 3 rounds of 21? Like, there's obviously no right answer or no objective answer. But
yeah, I think unless it's you took the exact workout or you changed it like slightly and you say inspired by, I think that's the line. And then if you change it completely and it just gives you inspiration to write a different workout with a different stimulus, CrossFit, where Taylor preferred a program for Charlotte in a perfect world. Andy and I program. Some weeks I program. Some weeks Bryson and I program. Some weeks Bryson, Andy, and I program. Some weeks Andy and I program and Bryson just sits there.
Some weeks Andy programs.
Some weeks. Without telling anybody. Okay, next question. This one's we should get through pretty quick. Getting stronger. Should you cut down on workouts for strength or try and make your workouts heavy? Meaning, if I'm trying to get strong, do I do less intensity or do I just make my intensity heavier?
Well, he said less workouts. He didn't say cut down on intensity.
No, he said, should I do less workouts? Meaning, like, should I do less CrossFitty workouts is how I'm taking that, and more strength sessions. Like, should I just do 5x5 back squats and not do Fran if I'm trying to get stronger? Or should I make Fran 185?
Yeah, I mean, I just read it literally as like less workouts, and then
I don't think that's what they meant.
It depends.
I think what they meant, let's answer it this way. The question is, if I'm trying to get stronger, do I do less CrossFit workouts or do I bias my CrossFit workouts to a heavier weight? I think it depends. As like you said, I think it depends, but I think it depends on how many CrossFit workouts you're doing to begin with. I think if you're a GPP class goer, you are not at the level of fitness where you should be cutting back on your metabolic intensity to get stronger. I think if you're a games athlete and you do 3 CrossFit workouts a day and you have 265 snatch as a guy, you can afford to cut out 1 CrossFit workout a day probably and focus on making your snatch heavier. But if you go to class and you're just like, man, I'm weak and I want to get stronger, well, you should probably continue to strive toward working toward the RX weights. You should be prioritizing real food and eating enough around your workouts and not ever being at a deficit if you want to be stronger. And sleep.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the easy answer is a lot of the stuff outside the gym, like Taylor's saying, with nutrition and sleep. But just in general, yeah, I would say that your intensity still needs to be there for sure. But just doing volume for volume's sake and doing these really, really long grinders, I mean, you only have enough energy to allocate in a day. And if you know you have a strength session, whether it's before or after, but you're still thinking about this 40-minute AMRAP that you have later, you're probably going to hold back a little bit. Or if you're doing it after the fact, you're not going to be able to put as much into that session because of that really, really long grinder that you did before.
Next question. Bryson?
There's a lot of weakness questions.
We answered that kind of. It's super vague and subjective.
Yeah. How to taper for competitions.
My general advice, and I like this question because I feel like not a lot of people have a general approach, but my general approach would be 2 weeks before your competition, cut your volume in half and make your intensity all out for that week. And then when you get to Sunday and you just finish your last training day, and then the following Friday is when your competition starts, you take Monday as an extra rest day. Tuesday, I think, should be a CrossFit workout that is really high ability to recover from, or like a high rate of recoverability. So think of something like burpees and double unders, or burpee and echo bike, or burpee and wall ball, something low volume that's really punchy and sharp. And then maybe some machine conditioning on top of that. And then Wednesday, I would cut back on your breathing quite a bit and focus on priming movement patterns that you're going to see in the competition. So if you have like a lot of heavy Olympic weightlifting, maybe you do some like hip extension drills, like ball slams, seated box jumps, proprioception type stuff, and developing the neurological connections and pathways, that type of stuff. And then maybe some empty bar work or some skill work on your gymnastics, but stuff that is very low intensity and it's just like movement practice. Again, your volume's cut in half, and now it's just your volume and your intensity's cut in half. And then Thursday, I think you either rest or do a really easy 20-minute like bike spin just to get your heart rate up. And then Friday, you should be pretty ready to compete, I think, generally speaking.
I agree with what Taylor said.
Cool, good talk. Okay, next question. I've got a great one. This one is, can you write a George Floyd memorial workout for Juneteenth? I bet you boys can't guess who submitted that question. He's sitting right there. Sorry, wrong. It was this guy. It was not. I can't even get it right.
Who would ask something like that?
That's crazy. What type of programming can help with endurance and stamina? I lack that during WODs. Thanks. 2 answers here. The answer for most people who don't have 5 hours a day to train is intervals. And I would say really lean into the 20 to maybe 18 to 36 minute time domain. And if you have longer time and you have more time to train, maybe you stretch it out a little longer, but really focusing on intervals. I like 2 on, 1 off. If you're very new to intensity, 1-to-1 work rest, 2 on, 2 off is great. As you develop your ability to tolerate intensity, 2 on, 1 off for multiple sets, or 1 on, 1 off for multiple sets, or even 3 on, 1 off for multiple sets. And I think that's kind of how you progress it. So maybe you start with 2 on, 2 off for 20 minutes, and then you do 2 on, 2 off for 32 minutes. So you go from 5 sets to 8 sets. And then maybe you're at 2 on, 1 off for 6 sets, and then 2 on, 1 off for 8 sets, and now you're 24 minutes. And then you go 3 on, 1 off, etc. And you just kind of undulate it and circulate it until you can handle higher intensities for longer periods of time. That's the first answer for me. Intervals like that. And you can also develop power by doing, like 15-second echo bike sprints every 2 minutes. And that can have a really, really profound effect on your ability to tolerate intensity as well. And I would say zone 2 is beneficial if you have the requisite time to train, and you're not sacrificing other things that are far more important for the sake of doing zone 2. The reason I dislike zone 2 so much is because it is mostly irrelevant for general population, because they are so weak and deconditioned and unskilled in so many other areas that spending an hour just biking at a low intensity or jogging at a talking pace doesn't give you the same reward as learning the squat snatch or doing 100 burpees for time or even doing an interval workout in 30 minutes. But if you can still do all those things and you have the time, then zone 2 training, definitely can develop your aerobic base very well. You just have to ensure that you eat enough to support it and that you're not at a caloric deficit at all. You're just going to experience muscle wasting, which is kind of counterproductive for a lot of athletes.
Yeah, I think the 1-to-1 thing is really, really good. And I think it's a great place to start. And for some people, they can just stay there and still see really, really continued progress. I think doing 30-30, 60-60, 90-90, 2 on, 2 off, that's probably, if you're really trying to develop some good power, I wouldn't go longer than 2 at a time. But to Taylor's point, you get more experience, you get fitter, you start cutting the rest time in half. I think going the other direction takes just as much experience, and knowing the amount of intensity that's required for a 1 on, 2 off is very, very unique. And it's really easy for someone to not get a whole lot out of the session because they can't be trusted with that responsibility of going that hard. Like if you're having 2-to-1 rest to work, you need to be really, really hurting bad doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, when Taylor said starting with 2 on, 2 off and then going to 2 on, 1 off, I think, and then progressing from there, you can go 3 on, 1 off, which it definitely is a progression of that. Like, you need to have a certain level of fitness to be able to get any sort of interval-like intensity with a 3 on, 1 off. But also, once you are good at the 2 on, 1 off, going back to the 2 on, 2 off, like what you're kind of saying, JR, is a different thing altogether. I wasn't even thinking 1 on, 2 off, but that's the same thing, same concept. Knowing how to go that hard in 2 minutes that you need 2 minutes to recover from, and you can't do it with 1 minute, is another thing entirely. And I think it can be a progression, like almost going backwards, how Taylor's saying, starting with the 1-to-1 and then going to 2-to-1. You can go back to that 2 on, 2 off and make it really hard.
Yeah. And this isn't really the question, but a lot of times if I'm writing workouts and I tell people the target time is 5 minutes and then they rest 5 minutes and they go again, I usually will try to make it a point to write specifically that you need to do the workout and trust that that's enough time for you to recover. Because if you don't tell them that, people will inevitably just hold back and they'll be like, I only get 5 minutes to rest, so I'm not going to go as hard as I can. 5 minutes is a long time. And that takes, you have to train that. You have to train to put yourself on the floor and know that in 5 minutes you can be ready to do it again. And that's, again, we talked about trusting people with that kind of intensity and how you can't do that kind of stuff every single day, because it will destroy you if you really, really understand the assignment, which a lot of people don't, unfortunately.
David Gora, we're going to take a question. Suggestions on progressions for improving strict handstand push-ups. I'm 207 pounds and I can do 3 to 4 kipping handstand push-ups for reps, but would like to master strict handstand push-ups. David, how tall are you? The first thing I look at when somebody asks, how do I improve body weight strength or your capacity at a body weight movement? The first thing that I look at is body weight. That's kind of the key. It's a body weight movement. You look at elementary school age girls and boys who have not even an eighth of the muscle mass of most people in a CrossFit gym can outwork these guys on pull-ups and handstand push-ups and push-ups. And it's because of body weight. So I would say the first thing to look at is body weight and trying to lean out a little bit if that applies to you. If that doesn't apply to you, then what I would focus on are EMOMs that start with a really low volume of reps, practicing the full range of motion movement, and then finishing that session with something that's very muscle fatigue, hypertrophy style burnout, stimulus feeling. So like maybe an example would be, sorry, I just don't have a comfortable chair. I have this freaking, what is that? What is wrong with my mom? So, I would start with like a 10-minute EMOM. And if I'm really, really bad at strict handstand push-ups, maybe I'll just do 1 on the minute and I'll go as slow down as possible. And then after that 10-minute window, I'll do 100 push-ups as fast as I can, or in as few sets as possible, maybe. So maybe I won't focus on time, but I'll focus on hitting as big of sets as I possibly can and say, okay, I'm going to give myself a 10-minute window, and I try to do a set of 34, a set of 33, and a set of 33 on my push-ups. And so you did a 10-minute EMOM of one strict handstand push-up in the minute, and then you worked on muscle stamina and strength on a regression of the strict handstand push-up that still develops body weight strength. I would play around with things like that. But the focus for most people on body weight strength stuff is body composition.
Yeah, I really like the EMOM strategy. I think in general for strict handstand push-ups, and I think this goes with strict pull-ups and dips and most forms of gymnastics, you can get a lot better just by doing, and they're not going to make you really sore. I mean, you could do 2-3 days a week, and at least for me, strict handstand push-ups were just a nightmare, and I'm still not good at them, but I felt the best at them when I was doing them at least twice a week, at least. Along with that, though, I think doing regular push-ups is like a cheat that people don't do. They just don't see the utility in them, and there's so much carryover there. Another thing, too, is to try to identify where you struggle in the movement. Like, this guy may have a great strict press, and while you're standing and not inverted, it is a different movement. Just like on a pull-up, most people don't struggle to get halfway up. They can explode out of the bottom of a pull-up, but the last 6 inches is the hard part. For handstand push-ups, typically it's the opposite. It's getting out of the bottom that's the hard part, but then when they get to that halfway up, they can press it out. So maybe using risers and working your way down is a good way to progress it if you're not even able to do one. Like, just finding the assistance that allows you to do, 2 or 3 on the minute, and then if you can, gradually decreasing that riser until you're almost touching the floor. That may help too.
I just had the craziest. I've been asked this question a lot, and I just read it and had the craziest idea for a response. Jay, what's the best way as a member to talk with the owner that members don't like the programming and are not happy? If you really want something to change and you're not super concerned with being forthright and honest, I would go to your owner and say, hey, everybody's feeling really sore and banged up. I've heard of a couple injuries, like this is bothering me, and this is bothering me, and it's the programming's fault, man. You're hurting us. That thought just popped into my head, and I've never had that thought before. But me as a programmer at a gym, as soon as somebody tells me they tweaked or hurt something, my immediate thought is, uh-oh, did I do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? And I never want it to be my fault. Obviously, I don't want to hurt people. So if that person has any sort of, compassion, that's how to get a change immediately. Otherwise, unfortunately, that is a really tough subject to broach with affiliate owners and programmers, because programming's like babies. Like, everybody thinks they have the cutest baby, and they all love their baby the most. And if you're going to tell somebody their baby's ugly is sin, like, they're just going to tell you to go find a different gym. Jay said I follow Sentinel. I'm not allowed to swear on the show, but you brought me really close, and I haven't sworn yet today. So I'm practicing self-restraint. Next questions. Hello. Next questions. Are dedicated heavy days required for affiliate programming?
I don't think so. I don't think so. That's just not the way that I think it has to be done. I think people can see gains in strength doing a plethora of different things. Days that we do have heavy lifting, and like even a 20 rep squat cycle, I mean, I got a lot of feedback of people that were really surprised with the progression they made, because they didn't really think of that as more of a strength thing. It's more of like a strength endurance type thing. I still think it's important for people to get out of breath in a traditional Metcon setting, whether it's monostructural work or whether it's skill work. Personally, I don't program heavy days as the sole thing of the day. If we lift heavy, typically we do something before or after. And again, it may be skill work, it may be strict gymnastics work, it may be machine work, but I don't think it's required at all.
Brandon Gomez, I switched out our Mayhem affiliate gym programming with the week of Sentinel and got told, wow, Mayhem has gotten really good this week. You should check out that stuff. That's the affiliate program. I agree. I don't think it's required. But here's where I think it's effective. And here's where I think it's a misconception from old school CrossFitters and, old dogs stuck in their way OGs, and where kind of both can be misused and misprogrammed. I think the heavy stimulus, meaning you are pushing your body to near maximal effort to move an external object, whether that's a deadlift or a back squat. And I think most of the time, the most beneficial way to do that is by squatting, pulling from the floor, pressing overhead. It's where you can get the heaviest for the adaptation or the stimulus provided by the heavy day. I think most people that do CrossFit now, that's arbitrary. A lot of people that do CrossFit now can handle that stimulus with additional metabolic intensity in a separate session, or sometimes even in the same session. So like someone like JR or Bryson or I can handle a near maximal lift effort and still get a lot of intensity out of a breathing focused workout in the same day or even within the same hour. I think there are a population of people who can't handle that intensity at the same time, and it's really beneficial for them to learn what it feels like to lift as heavy as possible without the added complexity or interference of metabolic intensity. And like people I'm thinking of are like Brenda or Sarah or Ann Shaughnessy that can get a lot of benefit from a 7x1 deadlift because they're all over 70. And that's going to delay, osteopenia and sarcopenia and just bone density issues.
Being old isn't the only thing that puts you in that population, though.
Right.
Trained.
Exactly. But I think there is a benefit of doing it in a class setting, but I don't think saying no one can get intensity on a heavy lift if they've done a workout before is true in any sense of the word. And almost nothing pisses me off more than when I hear that from coaches or programmers, because you're basically doing the exact opposite of programming for the best and scaling for the rest. You're under programming for anyone who's fit at your gym. And that's so freaking stupid. So do I think soul heavy days have their place? Yes. Even people like me could get a lot out of a soul heavy day, but do I have the capacity for more? And if I want more, should I get it? Yeah, for sure. But I just also think there are people who don't need more and probably should experience a heavy day without more as well.
Yeah, I think over the years too, because of what people saw on .com as what was on the screen and not maybe what was written in the captions, people started to have this false idea of heavy days. People need to go back to 2001, 2, 3, and 4. And they need to look through Greg's programming, because that is him writing main site and it's him writing all the notes. You will see clean and jerk 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And if you continue to read, it will say something on the lines of set a C2 rower at selection 4 and do the 3 on 2 off for 3 minutes or for 3 sets. Or it will say following the clean and jerk, accumulate 100 strict pull-ups as slowly as humanly possible. Like there is almost always gymnastics work or something accompanying it, or it may just say, he may have said bike hard and fast for 10 minutes,
right? And
then do your lift and then bike hard and fast for 10 minutes. Like it doesn't say Metcon for time this or AMRAP this, but the idea that it was always supposed to just be those 5 deadlifts and that's it, I think is misguided.
JR, when you say like how you say you don't do heavy days, but then you also say, hey, like sometimes we do lift heavy, but it's always going to be accompanied by like skill work or something like, do you like, would you ever do something that might look like a heavy day, but you have like skill work of rope climbs before it or after it or something? Because at that point, just like what you're saying, I would say that is just a heavy day. Like that's what those main site workouts that you're talking about look like.
Yeah, right. Like I think tomorrow's deadlift session is 5, 10, 5, 10, 5. And the instructions are just for all the sets of 5 to build and for your second set of 10 to go heavier than the first. It doesn't say build to a 5 rep max. It doesn't say build to a 10 rep max. And then afterwards, there's like a short Metcon. Even if there wasn't a Metcon there and there was just an EMOM of legless rope climbs or something, yeah, I think to your point, you're still getting a heavy day in, or you're getting a strength bias day in, but you're not just doing, okay, guys, come in today. All we're doing is working up to a heavy 3 rep max back squat. You'll be done in 20 minutes and you go home. And I think that's not the way to do it.
And what you're looking for is you're looking for people to approach the focus of the training session with your intent as the writer. So, hey, the focus is to make these deadlifts heavy. I don't want my athletes to look at the workout afterward and to pull up on the deadlifts in preparation for the workout afterward. So that's not, these athletes can't handle both. That's, you need to be a better coach and communicate the stimulus of the training day and ensure that your athletes follow through on it. So, I agree. I just think people can handle more. Next question. And
I really don't like the pushback of, well, if you're not doing it a certain way, you're not doing CrossFit, because this is what the methodology says. And I think whenever anyone has that idea, they need to think about what the base of the pyramid is, and they need to make sure that they can say they're doing CrossFit.
This is funny. Me and Bryson got into a huge argument about something Miranda Alcaraz said on her Instagram about people doing more training volume and that they only needed one thing a day. And I called Sevon because I wanted to ask him what Greg would say. And I forget what my question was. I'm trying to remember it here, but he was with Greg and he said, hey, ask him yourself. And I asked Greg, I was like, was your intention when you were writing CrossFit that people only ever have one expression of intensity a day? And he said, no, I never wrote a prescription for volume. I never prescribed a volume standard because different people can tolerate different levels of volume. So for anyone to throw out this arbitrary, this is how much you should do and no one should do anymore, is completely off base. And to even operate at the assumption that people can't handle more is putting a governor on them when potentially they could become fitter. And why is it your problem? And why are you chagrined or chafed or rubbed raw if somebody wants to work out more and can tolerate it and can handle it and benefit from it? Anyway, so if you have that belief, I asked Greg and he said, you're stupid.
I think that there's nothing wrong with doing like one expression of intensity a day in your affiliate programming and like having a lot of like skill work or things like that added on as second pieces 3 or 4 times a week. But what I do think is really annoying, the same way Taylor does, is when people act like it has to be that way no matter what, or like they almost like make fun of people who have like worked really hard to be able to do more.
Hey, so here's my question for you. Do you only do one expression of intensity a day?
No.
Okay. So if you think it's better for you, is there not the possibility that it's better for someone else who takes class as well?
I just said that it is.
Right. So, okay. So I guess when you say you think that it's fine, I agree that it's fine, but I also agree. I also think, while I agree that that's fine, that we shouldn't be just trying to be fine or just do a fine job.
I know what you're saying, but I think that for people who can do more and have like worked really hard to get to a point where they can do more, because obviously when I started CrossFit, I shouldn't have done more than one expression of intensity a day, and I didn't for a long time. And I tried to before I should have probably at some points, and I had to go back. And I think because that can just lead to negative things like, getting hurt or just like burnout or people not enjoying it and things like that for a gym, especially just depending on who you want in your gym. Like if you just want anyone off the street to be able to walk in and start taking your classes, having one like expression of intensity a day most of the time. And then, you know, when you have 2 pieces a day, one's usually a little bit more skill based, things like that, I think is good, because then the people who can do more than one thing really hard can still do that, but they can just do it before or after class, or even just not do the warm up with you guys and do some intervals or whatever. Whereas if you program it that way, where there's 2 really hard things today, or 3 really hard things today, or 2 hard things and a skill piece today, whatever that is, then you're kind of forcing the people who are doing class to partake in that sort of stuff and either do it really hard and get fucked up from it, or half-ass everything and be like, I don't really belong here. I really don't like fit in. I don't know if this is for me.
I just think that there's a place, and that really most affiliates do a terrible job of this, where they do what you were saying, but they also offer something for the person who can do more. Most of the time there's nothing additional offered for the person who can do more, and they have to go pay Proven or some other company for workouts, or it's, you know, the class programming is really tough to adjust for someone who just walked in off the street. So I just think that there is a middle ground, and not enough people try to meet it.
So what would you say that at CrossFit Charlotte, like having our gym programming and then people also getting Sentinel for free, like if we, you know, if that's something that they're interested
right, but
in,
expressing to people, if you want more of this, do this. Right now, we don't program the class workouts around Sentinel 60 and Compete. A lot of the workouts come from Sentinel 60 or from Sentinel Compete, but they're not written following the same timeline as the program. So there's not really this natural cohesion, where if somebody wants to do Monday 60 workout because that's the class workout, they could also do the accessory for Compete. It doesn't work like that. So now you're just asking people to program for themselves.
Right.
And so,
I see.
yeah.
So you're saying there should be something on top of class that's not necessarily like,
I think class should be 60 every single day. Is what I think. And then they could do the additional lifting or the additional skill development in addition to 60. That would be written on the 60 track. So they each training day of the week, they do the workout or the lifting from 60. And then if they want something extra, they can do that extra piece. And if they want something extra from that, they can look at Compete, which oftentimes follows the same exact movement pattern that day. And will allow them to not be redundant for the next training day. Or that would be what I assume would be best, or would like to try.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Wow, I just cranked one out. Not a.
Hey, I got like 2 minutes and I'm gonna go.
Okay. Unpack your statement about losing fitness, not squatting below parallel. Well, I think so I made a statement the other day and said that if you don't squat below parallel, you're like losing a massive amount of fitness. And I 100% stand by that. And I think it's important to define fitness as work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And if you're not squatting below parallel, there is a massive hole in broad time and modal domains. So just that aspect. If you're thinking of fitness as your ability to get a high heart rate and keep it high for a long period of time, squatting below parallel will definitely aid in that, but not squatting below parallel is going to kill your ability to do that. Like there are a lot of people who are fantastic marathon runners that don't ever squat. But I think if you can't squat, there is something functionally incapable about you as an athlete. So for me, not being able to squat below parallel heavy, it's like, wow, if I am ever find myself in that position in life, I'm screwed. I think in my case specifically, I was avoiding squatting below parallel in workouts and under intensity so that I could focus on mobility in my knee and being able to sit on my heels and all those things that life demands more frequently than squatting 315. And now that I've regained that mobility pain-free, I can do something like pill squats below parallel with a 100-pound pill with no pain and no swelling. So like that's something I'm focusing on. And then the more kind of physical like muscular and metabolic stimulus you get from squatting, it just produces a hormonal response in the body that not really any other exercise does. A heavy squat is maybe the best thing, period, for building strength. Like a heavy back squat or a heavy front squat or a heavy overhead squat. It works so many muscles in your body. It's insane. And the range of motion, the joint benefits from the full range of motion. It's just, the list is so long. I would say for me personally, the biggest thing I've noticed is my quad stamina. Even though my quads are the same size as they've always been, like they have not gotten smaller. Like my GHD sit-ups are way harder. I'm not as good on the bike erg. Like I just feel like my quad stamina and muscular stamina has gone into the crapper since not squatting below parallel consistently. So I am excited to be adding it back in incrementally and a little bit at a time.
JR, you go before you have to leave.
Well, that was his. It was his question specifically to him. Unpack that statement on.
What do you think about that statement? You think the statement's true?
No, I really don't think so. Like I think I think as far as maintaining strength in your legs to be able to do what life requires, the amount that you sprint, push a sled, carry, and do weighted lunging, so weighted single leg work, I think, and you jump a lot, which I think is also a sleeper. I wouldn't worry about your strength to be able to do whatever you want. Now, have you lost some fitness because you haven't been able to squat heavy or squat light and fast? I think that's valid for sure. But your ability to do whatever life requires of you, I don't think you have to squat to do that. I think that if you have to work around an injury like that, you can do it just fine.
I would argue it back against that. I would say if you can't do this in day-to-day life, if you can't sit on your knees like that without pain, like you are in a severely disadvantaged position as a person to be able to handle a lot of what life could throw at you.
That's me, I think.
You can't do that without pain.
No.
Stop that. Really?
No, I know I can't.
You're disadvantaged then. I mean, I was for years, dude. I couldn't get on a paddleboard with Lizzie at her lake house without being like, man, I have to stand or either stay tall kneeling. And it's both suck because I want to be able to sit on my heels. Do you think there's any way for you to regain that range of motion?
Oh yeah, if I spent 30 minutes a day just getting my quads loose, yeah, I would definitely be able to. Mine is because I think just because my quads are tight. So just getting that position like is that mobility just isn't there. More so than it is knee pain, I think.
I was talking about knee pain specifically.
Gotcha.
So okay, if you just have muscle tightness,
yeah,
I don't think that's like severely limiting, but like I felt like for 4 years it was like there's a grenade in my knee, and if I go any further, it's going to explode.
I think that what JR's saying about like the strength, obviously you can
paddleboarding, bro,
do things to make up for not being able to back squat. Like you can still be really strong, but if you just can't squat, you'll never be strong in a full range of motion squat. Like you won't be strong in the bottom of the squat, which is an important position to be strong in. So it just depends on what you want to be strong for. And then I think that takes it back to Taylor's just first answer to it is, hey, we're talking about work capacity. And if you can't do anything in the bottom of the squat, there's a huge portion of fitness that you're missing out of because you just can't do things there. You don't have any capacity in that position. It's the same way if someone can't even do this, just unloaded and put their arms over their head, then they're not fit.
Do it, JR. You can do it. Okay.
That elbow doesn't lock too good.
Mason Startup. What do you guys think about how often people will try to step ergs for running in classes? All right.
Hey, I got to go. You guys go.
All right. Love you, bro. We'll answer this one and get off. This was actually one of the questions that was asked. Probably to that memorial workout you asked me to write. What do you guys think about how often people will try to sub ergs for running in classes? You need to, aside from running's probably the most functional thing you need to be able to do as a human being is to be able to run. So I don't like running. I agree is just a terrible excuse. And it's not like really an excuse. But a lot of people will say, running really hurts my knees. I get shin splints or I have a bad ankle or whatever. Then allowing somebody the opportunity to get high intensity without pain is your job as a trainer and a coach. So you have to be able to discern the people who just don't like running and are being soft, or there's a reason they don't want to run, and maybe they're just not trying to tell everyone that, hey, my knee's really bugging me. They just want to bike and they want pain-free intensity. That's your job. And then I would say the people who do get pain from running, it's also your job to maybe analyze that a little bit more and see if there's a reason that you can work with that athlete to eliminate in the future so that they can run. So, hey, maybe they are too heavy, and by losing 10 pounds, you reduce, the amount of poundage pressure in your knees by 40 pounds. And they're much more capable of running without pain. Or, maybe they get shin splints because every time they run, it's in a class workout with a mile run chunk at a time. And they should really just be running for a minute slow and walking for a minute slow for 5 rounds and building that up so that they can sustain running without shin splints. That would be my answer.
I usually, every time we're coaching a running workout, I try to do what Taylor's saying, weed out the people who are just being soft about it. I'll usually say, hey, if you guys can't run due to injury, then we'll sub it for this, unless your injury is that you don't like running. And then the people who kind of giggle and laugh at and look at each other, I'm like, okay, those people just want to bike. They don't need to bike, things like that. So I think just especially if you're the one coaching, and that's what this question is coming from, just kind of having fun with your members and, letting them know that, hey, running can really suck in workouts, and I get it, but that's why you need to do it. And kind of being relatable to them can help a lot with that. Last
Cool.
question. Any power in things like fartlek training? You have to ask Taylor because he's the one who does that. I don't really know much about it.
What's fartlek training? What is that?
The fart portal.
What is it? Do you even know what that actually is?
I just told you what it is. That's what it is.
Fartlek training. Fartlek training, meaning speed play in Swedish.
Yeah, Taylor displays speed play with my with my fart portal in his tongue, like a speed bag.
Is a flexible type of interval training that alternates between faster and slower running. Fartlek. Why do Swedish people ruin everything, dude? Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, obviously there's benefit to that. It's you do that kind of in every CrossFit workout. You're really good at box jump overs, but you're bad at toes to bar, and the workout's 20 box jump overs, 20 toes to bar. You push the box jump overs really hard and you break the toes to bar frequently. Fartlek training. That's a fartlek. That's a fartlek, CrossFit. So do the fartlek.
Fartlek workouts
all the time. I'm going to write the fartlek training. Like Swedish tacos. Is that now I have to look up Swedish tacos. I hope that's not like a
it's going to take you to a porn site.
What is that? Dirty Dictionary, Urban Dictionary. Swedish tacos. I don't see anything. How many?
Dang, did your coaches get fired? They made you lick their farts? We had fartlek days in high school cross country.
Maris, we're going to do the fartlek training today. They're going to lick my fart. Well, Bryson and Maris do that, I think, pretty frequently. So I'll let you and Maris get back to that. I mean, I like that style of interval training is nice. It's like there's a workout. It's an old Chinshaw workout. It's probably one of my favorite track day workouts. That is that, and it's 100-meter run. Like it's a sprint essentially, but you kind of build your intensity, or it should be at a repeatable 100-meter sprint pace. And then 200-meter recovery jog, 100-meter sprint, 400 recovery, 100-meter sprint, 600 recovery, 100, 800, 100, 1,000, and then back down, 100, 800, 100, 600, 100, 400, 100, 200, 100, done. And I think it totals to just about 4 miles of running. Really good way to undulate speed and kind of a sustainable pace. So it's cool. I like it. Sorry for being so facetious. Anyways, if you guys want some of the sickest programming utilizing these principles of programming that we've been discussing for the past 1 hour and 9 minutes, scan the QR code Sentinel Training for a 14-day free trial. And me and Bryson actually love to coach you guys too. So we give feedback for, movements, lifts, gymnastic skills, etc. We respond to that stuff and give you guys cues and help you out. Keeping It Real did our compete workout today. It was 90 seconds of work, 90 seconds of rest. I don't remember how many sets. Maybe it was 6 to 8. Grant, how many sets was it? 6 or 8 sets? And it was 1 wall walk, 2 wall facing strict handstand push-ups, 3 box jump overs at 36 inches. And it was an AMRAP. So it was a 90-second AMRAP, 90-second rest, 1, 2, 3, 6 sets. Yeah, nice workout. Cool workout. Awesome. All right, you guys. Love you guys. I want to do more shows like this. These are like my favorite kinds of shows, but maybe we should pick a more broad and general overarching topic that we can dissect for a longer period of time next week.
I feel like we should go a little more specific so that we can do multiple shows. Like, hey, this is ask your running questions here or something.
Oh,
and
let's do strength progressions for CrossFit. I feel like that's one I'd like to do.
Okay.
All right. We'll ask JR. See ya.